I need this. I got my notes. And I got my book. I am tired today. Oh, my lantas, am I tired? Very, very tired. But I am excited to talk about the Akashic Records. So, this is the Divine Design series. The Divine Design is a book that I wrote, and it was published in August of 2022. You can get the book in any link down below, audio or hard copy, paperback. It's available. Highly recommend it. It is all about Earth's evolution and humanity's evolution and the history of our evolution, the history of humanity's experience of navigating this for millions of years, and Earth's experience of navigating this for millions and millions of years. We've done 4 other episodes, and today is about the Akashic Record. Now, there are so many subjects in this book that I could dissect. It could take over a year if we did every single week. I would have a subject after subject to talk about. So, this is just one of many, many topics that this book covers. So thank you for being here. Go get your book, The Divine Design, and sit back, relax, and enjoy this part of the story of the human experience. And the Akashic Record is a part of your story. It's something that every single soul that is in a body had to experience. It is impossible to be a human walking around and not have been a part of the Akashic Record, standing in the halls of the Akashic Record, so to speak. Every single human has an Akashic Record. It is a universal law. So let's begin. First of all, why did I choose the Akashic Record to talk about? I could have talked about so many other things. One is because currently on the planet, we are clearing out the Akashic Record. And so what that means is that what has steered and navigated our human journey, which has been the lessons that we have wanted to learn, the contracts that we put together before we came down, the ancestral line that we connected to and agreed to. These are all clearing. And so they're clearing because the body is increasing its frequency, which means that the DNA or light codes are increasing. And when that happens, they shift into new states. And therefore, the ways that we were in these lower frequencies, we no longer are going to be. And so a lot of how we have lived on this planet has been based on the Akashic Record, what we chose to experience. And so we're clearing contracts, which is relationships. We're clearing the ancestral lines, which is an energetic cord. We're clearing core consciousnesses that we chose to have, which are the foundational lessons that you wanted to master. And we're stepping into a more expanded state where we are being driven by the soul and not the ego. All right, so let's begin with, when did the Akashic Record begin? So if you read my book, or if you watched the first couple of episodes of this series, you know that the humans started out in a 5th dimensional vibration, in a 5th dimensional field, in a 5th dimensional body, millions of years ago. And in that physical form, there was no Akashic Record. There was no need for an Akashic Record. The reason that there is an Akashic Record is so that the soul, which has amnesia when it goes into the 3rd dimension, the soul can remember what it's doing here on the planet. In the fifth dimension, when the human body is in a fifth dimensional frequency, fifth dimensional field, it's in a high enough vibration that the soul that's in the body remembers what it's doing on the planet. It remembers who it is, why it's here, and how this quantum field works. And because there isn't duality or polarity, the soul has a much easier time navigating. It doesn't need a roadmap. It doesn't need contracts. It doesn't need core consciousnesses to experience and to master. It doesn't need a blueprint, which is the purpose. In fact, the purpose of coming onto the planet way back then, millions of years ago, was to simply experience the earth, to volunteer and experience the evolution in consciousness. The purpose of the blueprint came about when the human shifted down into the third dimension, because now there was a need or an assistance for souls to come down and assist the planet. So it shifted everything. Anywho, when the human shifted down into the third dimensional field, which you can read about in the book and you can listen to in, I think, episode 2 or 3, I talk about it. Or episode 1 too, I can't remember. When the human body shifted down into the third dimension, it was in a very different reality. It was in a very different physical field. It was in duality and it was in polarity. It was in heaviness. And it had there was much more that could be experienced in this lower dimensional field. There's many more emotions available or energies available in lower fields of consciousness. So the dimensions kind of stretch out and you just have more to experience. That's why there's duality and polarity when you move down into lower dimensional fields. So the third dimensional human, about 15,000 years ago, give or take, is when the third dimensional human started to populate the planetary body. The Akashic record was created. And again, it was created because the density of the third dimension was so heavy that the soul would forget what it was doing here, was be completely disconnected. And the third dimension is such a chaotic field that if a soul goes down without some sort of framework, life is very chaotic. It would be like you're coming down onto a planet that has such possibility and opportunity, but there isn't a path. And so you're sort of running around in circles, just the soul doesn't know what it's or what not to choose. And so the Akashic record really creates a beautiful path. Like what would be the word? It's like what's the word that they used in the book that I really loved? Roadmap. It's like a roadmap, right? And so 15,000 years ago, give or take, when the Galactic Federation of Light were recreating the Earth in this 3D form and recreating the human in the 3D form, they had to create different universal laws that would exist in this third dimensional field. And one of the universal laws they had to put into place, thank you so much for that super chat, NJ Rock Girl, Allison, I appreciate that. One of the universal laws was the Akashic record. So it was absolutely necessary in a third dimensional field. And it keeps the soul on a map, on a road map, on a path, right? And that's why when you look back at your life, thank you so much, Metaphysical Mike. When you look back at your life, there's always something guiding you. Whether you saw it back then or you didn't, when you look back, you can always sort of see certain moments in your life where you were divinely directed or orchestrated, right? Your intuition is always trying to guide you. That is the soul connecting to the Akashic record. All right. It's a necessary roadmap that you're on. Um, so briefly, let's describe what the Akashic record is. Okay. Now we know why. I just described why we have the Akashic record. Keeps the human somewhat contained, and it keeps the human in a closer connection to why they came down here, and who they are, right? And because of amnesia, which is the density of this third dimensional plane, the heaviness of this third dimensional plane creates this amnesia where the human forgets, the soul forgets. And because of, thank you so much, Torsten, for that super chat. And because there is massive amounts of duality and polarity, a roadmap is necessary. It's absolutely necessary in this third dimension. Okay. So the Akashic records the Akashic record is a map or a navigational tool for the higher dimensional consciousness incarnating into the third dimensional human body. All higher dimensional consciousnesses that incarnate into a human form, when they say higher dimensional consciousnesses, a spirit or a soul, okay? When they incarnate, every single soul that incarnates into the human body has to create an Akashic record for their human experience. The records are designed within the quantum field, and there is an infinite amount of possibilities to choose from when you're in the Akashic record. So you can imagine that as a soul, and all of you guys have this memory, okay? As a soul, you walk into this sort of quote unquote room, and you're told how the third dimension works. You're told how this third dimensional planetary system works. You're told that you're going to lose your memory of who you are. You're told that you're going to forget that you're soul. You're told that you're going to forget that you chose to go down and the why of choosing to go down. They tell you that there's massive amounts of duality and polarity. So you're going to feel a splitting in consciousnesses. They let you know that you're going to believe that you're these consciousnesses or emotions and thoughts. They tell you that there are core consciousnesses that you have to choose, a handful of them. And these core consciousnesses are what keep you on track. These core consciousnesses can be, they are specific experiences that you have throughout your life. There's their theme, right? So if one of the themes that you've had most of your life is abandonment, that's a core consciousness you chose to experience. If you've always been very wealthy, right, having abundance, that's a core consciousness you may have chosen, right? If you have constantly lived in lack, a poverty mindset, that is a core consciousness that you may have chosen. Now, not all the themes in your life are core consciousnesses that you chose in the Akashic record, but a handful of them are. When you look back at your life, there are specific themes that have followed you throughout your life that you're clearing now or that you cleared. Those are core consciousnesses that you had to choose in the Akashic record, right? And again, the reason that you chose these is to keep you on track so that you're not experiencing a smorgasbord of really heavy, intense energies or consciousnesses, which can throw you off. Right? When your soul chooses just a handful, then believe it or not, you stay on course, right? It's easier to navigate. So the Akashic record they're light codes, okay? It's information or light codes that you choose that are then held within the human DNA. All right. So the records are the experiences, they are the contracts, they are the information, the knowledge that you're choosing from the quantum field, brought down into light codes, and then moved into the DNA structure of the body when the soul comes in. So I want you to imagine it's sort of like you're in a library, okay, but the library is energy. And you're scrolling through all the books. And the Akashic record, which is contains, I'll read everything the Akashic record is contained with. Okay. The Akashic record has, where is it? Okay. The Akashic record holds the day, the time, and your physical location of birth. So you choose that. So you're in the library, and these beautiful higher dimensional beings say, okay, you need to choose what day you're going to be born, what time you're going to be born, and where on the planet are you going to be born. And so you're looking around the library, and you're like, all right, I'm going to choose dunk, 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 right? You point, so to speak, right? And these records are just energy, which turns into codes of light, which is information. So you can imagine that literally January 7th, 1942, that comes literally almost comes out of the bookshelf, and now it's a light code. And this light code starts to store in almost like a briefcase, which we will call the Akashic records. Okay, so then you say, where do you want to be born? I want to be born in Africa. I want to be born in Nairobi. Okay, perfect. The information of Nairobi comes and is placed into a light code and dropped into the suitcase. Okay, what kind of physical attributes do you want? What color of your skin do you want to be? That is also dependent upon where on the planet you're going to be born, right? So you're thinking about your physical attributes. Do you want to be a male or a female? Physical male, physical female. So all of these physical attributes are chosen. You start to choose your family from the bookshelves. Right? I want a father that's like this. I want a mother that's like this. I want 3 sisters and 2 brothers. Okay, great. I want an ancestral line that is connected to the Holocaust. Okay, great, because that means that I'm going to be experiencing ... Or I'm going to choose an ancestral line that is connected to the slaves that were that began thousands of years ago. Okay, great, that's your lineage. I'm going to create soul contracts with certain people, certain souls, right? So you're connecting to certain souls in the Akashic record at the same time that are going to agree to meet you down on the planet and play out certain contracts for you, or core consciousnesses. So you're also going around and you're choosing core consciousnesses through the library. Wow, I really want to experience abandonment. I think I'm going to experience abundance. I'd love to experience true love this time, like real, beautiful love. And then there's just a handful of the core consciousnesses, because when you go down, you're going to experience so much more, right? So you don't just experience the core consciousnesses, but the core consciousnesses are the themes of your life. And so as you're pulling the core consciousnesses into these light codes and putting them in your briefcase, the higher dimensional light beings, the Galactic Federation of Light, say, okay, you want to have abandonment as your core issue, or sexual abuse as your core issue, core consciousness, they call it. Let's find a soul that's going to come down at the same time and elicit that trauma for you. Okay, great. Who's going to do that? Then the soul comes down and says, I'll do it. It's this intricate designed, divine design that happens in the Akashic records that's beyond our comprehension in a third dimensional linear space-time continuum. You can't wrap your head around it. Right? Because the souls that you've contracted with may already be down on the planet, already living their lives, right? So it happens in no space and no time. You're connecting to souls that haven't even been born yet. You're connecting to souls that aren't going to be born until 20 years after you're already born, right? So none of the time doesn't matter. It doesn't exist in the Akashic records. It's outside of that. And so there's all these agreements that are being made, agreements with your family, agreements with the people that you're going to meet that are going to assist you along the way to experience these core consciousnesses and to clear these core consciousnesses, right? Um, what else is in here? The blueprint. So you're going around and you're like, oh, wonder what I want to do as my purpose down there this time, right? Do I just want to hold the light? Do I want to be a teacher? Do I want to be a parent? Do I want to be a psychic? Do I want to be uh, a witch? Do I want to be um, just a simple, plain person that just has a regular life and just impacts based on who I am every day, right? That kind of thing. So you are pulling the blueprint. You pull it out of the bookshelf, so to speak, right? And it's an energy, and then it turns into a light code. It holds that knowledge, that information, and it gets dropped straight into the briefcase. And so what ends up happening is that you start to build your Akashic record. All right. And some of us have really crazy Akashic records because we chose to be born in a country that is going through chaos and war. And then we chose this ancestral line that is full of abuse and trauma and lack. And then we chose these core consciousnesses that are like, abuse and neglect and unworthiness, perhaps. I don't know. There's an infinite amount of things you could choose. And some of us have these other Akashic records we created that are, you decide that you're going to live in this beautiful country that has, and you're not really connected to a really potent traumatic ancestral line, and you've chosen the core consciousness. So everybody has to choose some intense core consciousnesses because there's so much intensity out there that in order to keep you on path, you have to have a couple that are the ones that are going to direct you and keep you focused and aligned in it. But you're also living in an abundant lifestyle with a family that's just loving and beautiful. And, so it's all choice. And every single soul chooses this Akashic record. And every single time a soul incarnates, they choose a different Akashic record. And every single Akashic record is completely separate from a previous lifetime. And so when you start to talk about karma is when a soul comes back after a lifetime and steps back into the Akashic record area, they are not told, hey, you didn't complete these things. You need to choose these again as a core consciousness or as a lesson. The reason it doesn't work that way is because outside of that narrative that we're told around karma, which is you have to clear and heal, otherwise you're on a karmic cycle and you have to come back until you heal it or clear it. That is a very third dimensional way of seeing the human experience. It's a very restrictive way of seeing the human experience. What happens when soul pops out of this linear time frame and the restrictiveness of duality and polarity, there is nothing but choice, free will. So when soul leaves a life, it doesn't matter if it learned the core consciousness or not. It had a life. It experienced the life. If it finished it in the way that it wanted to, great. If it didn't, great. Either way, the life is complete. And then the soul chooses if it wants to come back down. There is no karmic trap. There is no incarnation trap. That is a dialogue that is based in fear. And any fear dialogue does not exist outside of a very dualistic, polarized, third dimensional frame of reference. And so we have these narratives that say that there is this karmic cycle or reincarnation cycle that people get stuck in, and that souls are trapped in on this in reincarnation. That's not true. Any story that is based in fear is held in a third dimensional frame of reference. The experience and frame of reference of fear doesn't exist when you step out of these lower dimensional fields. And so we're telling ourselves all of these stories and narratives that are based in fear, believing them because we are living in fear. And so our storylines are going to be revolving around fear. But as soon as we pull ourselves as souls outside of the restriction or experience of fear at all, then it simply just becomes choice, free will. And there is no right or wrong way of doing life and what life you want to do next. It's all just this great big experiment and experience. And what am I going to choose next? People have to remember, we need to remember the what fear is, and all of the storylines that we hold based on a specific frequency of consciousness is dictating the consciousness that that experience is going to be held in. And when you are out of the physical realm and you are in higher dimensional realms, which is what happens when the soul leaves the body, you're no longer held in these lower dimensional realms of fear. So those narratives don't exist. So when you are soul and you come into this beautiful library and you start choosing all of these things, and their energy at first, then you stick them, they turn into light codes. The light codes are held in the DNA, and then you are about to be born, right? You've got your little records, you've got your little suitcase, all of the things that you're going to experience and be and hopefully remember in your lifetime. And then it's go time. The light opens, right? The chute opens and you go in. You've got your suitcase. And this is the DNA. This is a huge portion of your DNA, which all DNA is light codes. DNA is just the structure that holds the light codes. That's all DNA is. It's like the coding of the light codes, right? The body, the physical form needs to store the light codes, and so the DNA is the, like, when you get a sausage, it has the thin layer around it, but the sausage isn't that thin layer. That's like DNA. DNA is the thin layer of the actual sausage. The light codes are the sausage. It's the juice. And so the light codes are held in the DNA, and the soul brings it down, drops into that place on the planet at that specific time. Souls choose their names. Whether the parents hear the names or not is a crapshoot, but many times the parents hear the names and they go in. And then the Akashic record starts to play out. It's what leads the soul and the human through life. And that's how it works. And so because it's in the light codes, because the records are in the light codes, as your body starts to increase in frequency, the light codes are getting activated. So most of the Akashic record is in a third dimensional frequency. So the light codes that hold the Akashic records, the contracts, the ancestral lines, the core consciousnesses, what else? Yeah, those are the three that are shifting right now. Core consciousnesses are shifting. You're clearing. You're healing trauma. Contracts are clearing. You're clearing contracts with people. So patternings that you've had with people most of your life starting to change. Contracts that you've held with family members are starting to change. Friends are starting to change. And then the ancestral lines are starting to change. Those are being healed, quote unquote, healed, right? Recognized, being aware. Why is this happening? Because as the frequency of the body begins to increase, the light codes within the body activate and shift into higher frequencies. When those light codes start to shift into higher frequencies, the old information starts to dissolve. It no longer is running the show. It's no longer active. So the contracts dissolve. The ancestral lines, the ways in which you were behaving or performing based on the energetic cord you had connected to your ancestors starts to dissolve. It's no longer impacting you, right? And the core consciousnesses, the lack, the unworthiness, the abuse, these things that you have been dealing with most of your life, they start to dissolve. Now, we look at that as healing, or we look at that as trauma work, or we look at that as miracles, right? But it is actually, in terms of physics, it's just the body holding higher frequencies of light, which activate those light codes, the third dimensional light codes that are part of the Akashic record, and it starts to dissolve the Akashic record. And so what we are doing is we're starting to stand in a very different experience on the planet where the Akashic record is no longer driving our lives. Okay. So where you were born and the name you chose and the family you chose, and your blueprint, those all stay in the Akashic record. Those aren't going to change because your body is still experiencing itself in that very kind of third dimensional physical realm. And these are part of the Akashic record that has solidified. It's anchored in, and you can't undo that, right? You can't undo where you were born. You can't undo. It's a solidified part of the Akashic record that is in your DNA, but that does not shift. And so what is shifting is how you are being and becoming on the planet. And so when you are run by the Akashic record, what that means is that the soul has not yet come online, and the egoic structure is navigating the human experience through the Akashic record, which means that it is navigating its world through contracts, through the ancestral line, and through core consciousnesses. And so it's unconsciously choosing the same patterns based on the core consciousnesses it chose. It's unconsciously finding itself in these contracts with people, these soul contracts that are assisting him or her in playing out these core consciousnesses or healing these core consciousnesses, right? And the egoic structure is living from a very unconscious program of how my ancestors experienced this planet unconsciously is how I'm going to be experiencing this planet, right? These are all very unconscious ways in which the ego plays out and lives in this human experience. Okay, it's very unconscious. You're not saying to yourself, oh, I just unconsciously brought myself to another contract so that I can play out the core consciousness that I'm eventually going to clear in my life. Right? Even if you understand contracts, most people don't truly understand what it means when they are finding themselves in contracts and clearing these contracts. You're actually clearing the Akashic record. And so what happens when more and more this becomes apparent and conscious to the human, the soul is coming online. So the soul is starting to wake up, and it's starting to drive the boat. And when the soul comes online, the soul remembers, oh my God, I chose these core consciousnesses. I'm not this core consciousnesses. Whoa. Oh my God, I chose all of these contracts. Holy shit, I'm clearing these contracts right now. And the soul says, oh my God, I chose that ancestral line that connected me to so much lack. And as I become more and more aware of the soul that I am, I realize that I was never those ancestral patterns. That's how you clean and clear and heal from your ancestral lines, is that you realize that you never were the ancestral patterns, that you chose to be born into an ancestral pattern, which is an energetic cord connecting you to the ancestral patterns. And you may never actually had experienced what your ancestors went through, but because you have decided to incarnate connecting an energetic cord to a specific type of ancestral line, you are going to experience what those ancestors experienced unconsciously without actually physically going through what they went through. So when you start to wake up, when the soul starts to come online, which means the body starts to hold more light, which means that your body begins to vibrate in higher frequencies, which means that the light codes begin to shift, which means that the DNA is shifting, which means that you are becoming aware and conscious. All these things start to dissolve. They start to become no longer prevalent or part of how you are experiencing the world. And so your choices are free from the trauma. Your choices are free from the soul contracts, meaning that these soul contracts are no longer binding you to why you came together. What lesson were you trying to learn? What you'll start noticing as you evolve is that the relationships that you start having with people are not contractual. What that means is that you are evolving into these states of frequency that are no longer connected to the Akashic record. Okay, because you have evolved out of the Akashic record. Now you are beginning to create your life through the lens of your soul. So it's a much more embodied experience. So it's an intuitiveness, a resonance, a knowingness. It's a more healed version of you. So you're not choosing to play out old patterns, old programming, old core consciousnesses. All of this works in tandem. So then as you move forward, the relationships that you start to get into, the friendships, the partnerships, they're not soul contracts in the same way. They are resonances. They are energetic frequencies that match. It all becomes just energy now. You are breaking free from the very restrictive way that the Akashic records work. And you're stepping out into a quantum field now because your vibration has arisen and you're starting to be embodied as soul. And so you start navigating the energetic world as the soul that you are, knowing that you are not the emotions, thoughts, traumas, ancestral wounds, all of that stuff that everybody believes they are, because they're still stuck in the lower dimensional realm, thinking that they are the Akashic record. So this evolution is popping us out of that amnesia. And you will start to experience relationships, friendships, lovers, not from a contractual place any longer. Eventually, this is what we get to. So it's either a resonance or not a resonance. It either comes together or it doesn't come together. Either works or it doesn't work, right? There's no longer the contracts that you have with a lot of people are very they're like you meet somebody and it's like this, you come together, whether it's for one day, 2 weeks, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but contracts are very intense. There is an absolute deep purpose for it. You know it when you meet it. It usually triggers a lot of stuff. Again, this can be 1 day, 1 hour, or 25 years of your life, right? But they are designed to create a triggering within you to heal or to access core consciousnesses or in the ancestral lines so that you can wake up, so that you can step out of it. You can bring awareness to it. Problem is that we are in such deep amnesia. We are in such heaviness and heavy density that it is very, very difficult to remember that we are not that which we experience. We are not our relationships. We are not the contracts. We are not the trauma. We are not the ancestral stuff. We're none of it. And so when we start to recognize that, we start to pop out of it. Slowly but surely, we start popping out. And more humans are going to be popping out of the Akashic record and stepping out of everything that has predicted our lives. Right? All of the things that we've been working on for so long. So the things that stay the same are the parts of the Akashic record that have been implanted, basically. So that will never change because it's already complete, which is where you were born, male or female, the family you chose, and your blueprint, your signature never changes. Your blueprint, the why of you being here is in your DNA. And it can be activated as early as 1 month old. It can be activated at 6 months old, 5 years old, 10 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old. It's this knowingness, right? That you're here for a reason. That's your blueprint. Whether you ever figure out the specifics, because many times, many of you don't have a specific blueprint. It's just to assist humanity in evolving into higher states of consciousness. And it can happen by just an everyday regular job. It can happen by raising a family. It can happen by being a checkout clerk. It can happen by being a teacher. It happens in all these different ways. The part that humans suffer in is that they think that there is a very specific reason that they are here and they need to find it. And so they find themselves suffering a lot of the time because they can't figure out what their purpose is. What they're tapping into is the blueprint they pulled from the Akashic record. And there's a knowingness. And so then they think there has to be some sort of specifics in that. And the knowingness itself is enough. It really, really is enough. Okay, so I think that is kind of like the brief synopsis in a nutshell. Do you guys have I'm sure you guys have so many questions. But okay, yeah, what questions do you guys have? Around what I just said. There's so many different directions we can go in with the Akashic record. But let's dive into any questions that you guys have around it. We'll see what pops up. Thanks, Louise. I feel like I gave you guys a Cliff Notes version of the Akashic Records. How does it pertain to the real ground practical work of dismantling control structures? Control structures are mind control. So for most humans, the breaking free from the control structures in our system, the systems that control us, the governments, the medical systems, the educational systems, that's not part of the Akashic records, so to speak, although there's many core consciousnesses that have to do with control. So there is a core consciousness that maybe you chose where you were going to be dealing with not being in control during your life, right? And so you would constantly be experiencing moments where you were not in control. So it was something that you were constantly battling or dealing with, learning to navigate. But for just the collective in general, the human collective, that's a collective energy. It would almost be like if the collective, if the human collective had an Akashic record, mind control would be a core consciousness that the entire human collective would have to step out of, right? So it's not necessarily an individual experience in the Akashic record. That's more of an entire human collective, part of a third dimensional frequency, dimensional field that we are evolving out of through the process of awakening, right? So dismantling control structures is part of the evolution in human consciousness. If I realize these things, why can't I break from the codes that caused my illness? Well, there there's a lot of different reasons why you may have the illness, right? And if the illness is part of the Akashic record, then you will be shown as you kind of awaken more and more uh, to the why of the illness. And then if there is compassion and awareness and a following of the body, the illness will direct you to where the body needs to go. You know, a lot of people chose illness in part of their Akashic record, and there's a lot of illness that has nothing to do with the Akashic record. You know, many times illness in the Akashic record is never meant like a disease that somebody may have chosen. Does it may never be healed or cleared in the human lifetime, right? So let's say somebody comes in and they chose to be a quadriplegic. That's not going to change necessarily, right? Or they chose to have brain damage when they were born, as hard as that is to comprehend. You know, every soul that is on this planet chooses almost everything they experience. And so that's not something that's going to the human isn't going to necessarily evolve out of that. So there are permanent experiences like the color of your eyes and the color of your skin and where you were born. These things are solidified, they're anchored in. And sometimes in the Akashic record, dis-ease, disease and illness and things like that, it's part of the Akashic record that may not shift. But many illnesses are designed to shift. Many illnesses, the majority of illnesses that humans are experiencing are designed to shift. Is there any past life information in our Akashic records? Yeah, I think if you, there's no, when you go into the Akashic record, that person's Akashic record, you imagine that you're stepping into their library, the soul's library. And so that the soul has many different books, which would be lifetimes. And so if you are standing in a soul or a human's Akashic record, the possibility of reading the other books that are in there, um, it's possible, right? You can read the other experiences that soul had, but it's not part of the Akashic record in the sense that it was pulled out of the, all the books are lined here, and it's like, oh, I'm going to pull this past life and put it in the Akashic record. I'm going to pull this past life and put it in the Akashic record. Past lives aren't they don't go into the Akashic record. Um, but if you stand in someone's Akashic record because you're standing in their soul, you'll be able to see the other books that they wrote, the other lifetimes they had, just by connecting to the soul. But every Akashic record is its own book. It's its own little suitcase, right? It's just this lifetime. But you're connected to a soul that has had many lifetimes, so you'll be able to read the other lifetimes that they had, perhaps, if the soul is open to it. If the soul says, yeah, go ahead, read the other books of my different lifetimes. Your soul remembers every life you've ever experienced. Our children who are being born now, as we head towards 5D, have less core consciousnesses to clear. Yes, they have less core consciousnesses because they're more aware of how this world works, and they have more light, and so they're connected. They're connected. They're connected to the remembrances, so they have an easier way of navigating. They don't buy into the bullshit. They're not unconscious like we were. A lot of children right now are not unconscious in the way that we were unconscious. And so if you're not unconscious, you don't need the core consciousnesses to navigate. The reason we have core consciousnesses is because we are so unconscious that it would be a shit show if we dropped onto the planet without a map, because we would literally be falling for everything. We would have abuse, and then we would have alcoholism, and then it would be we need the core consciousnesses to keep us on a roadmap. We only focus on these because there's 18,000 other things that I could experience, but these are the ones I'm choosing, and this is what I'm focused on, right? But that's only because we're unconscious to the fact that we aren't any of that. And so these kids that are being born are coming onto the planet much more aware that they are not what they're experiencing. They see through it all. And so they don't need that roadmap because they're looking out at the quantum field. And they're like, I know I'm not that. I know I'm not that. I know that that's bullshit. I know that's not real. They're aware of all of it. So they have, it's easier for them to have free will. When you're unconscious, free will can create chaos. So then there needs to be an Akashic record that keeps you in the unconscious state, kind of like on a path. I know I've been shadow banned. It's crazy. I'm glad that you're finding me, my friend. Um, how can we tap into our Akashic record? I don't know. I don't know how you can tap into your Akashic record. It's a knowingness. It's in your body. It's a memory. It's a remembrance. Um, so it's a knowingness. You'll know. Like when you look back at your life, you'll know the contracts you had. When you look back at your life, you'll see the core consciousnesses, which are the patterns that kept playing out. They're the same 2 or 3 patterns that kept playing out, right? Those are the core consciousnesses. Um, when you look at how your parents were and how you are, you can see patterns that will give you an idea of the ancestral line that you chose. But I'm not an Akashic record reader, um, but I know what it looks like. You do too. You remember, you just forgot. As a soul moves in and away from the third dimension, is it possible to maintain the same relationships? Of course. I don't believe, Linda, that when people, because I know there's a lot of teachings out there that talk that about when you move into more of like a fifth dimensional field or realm, that you lose your friends and family and all of that. And I don't believe that's true, for in all cases. Like you when you start to shift into when your body starts to shift into higher frequencies, your resonance changes, the vibration from your body changes, what you want to be around changes, what you're capable of being around changes. Thank you, Lorna, for the super chat. It changes, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to end relationships, or uh, that your job's going to end, or like it doesn't necessarily mean that. Part of the thing that makes this evolution so profound and magical and miraculous is that we are still standing in a third dimensional field. So it doesn't go anywhere. This idea that we leave the third dimension is not true. You see, dimensional fields are layered on top of each other. And so once you see a dimensional field, you can never unsee it. That's the greatest part about awakening, is once you see it, it can't be unseen, right? What you're doing is you're starting to see new realities, but the old realities are still there. You're just choosing to not play in them. So everything's still going to be here. It's just that you are starting to choose to be in different ways, maybe with different people, maybe not. You know, the people that are closest to me are not necessarily the ones that are in my same frequency, so to speak. But I feel at home with them. I feel calm with them. Um, they do very different stuff than I do, but I feel at peace with them. Right. So it's not like you have to go out and find like-minded people that are, but you will find that people that are in different frequencies, there's going to be a dissonance, perhaps, right? Oof, can't be around them anymore, right? It's not because they're bad or you're good or any of that. It's just frequency. But I don't like this teaching that talks about, I think it's so dangerous, the teaching that talks about how you're going to leave everybody behind. It's just simply not true. you know, it's all based on choice. Just think about Jesus or other masters. They didn't leave people behind. They they became the master in front of them. People are like, "Oh my God, are my grandparents and my mom, is my mom and dad going to be able to come with me?" It's like, where are you going? Are my friends going to come with me? Am I going to leave people behind? You're not going anywhere. You're going nowhere. Your reality is going to change. Your experiences are going to change. The people you chill with are going to change maybe, but nobody goes anywhere. And the greatest gift that you can give yourself is the ability to compassionately allow for change to happen, which means some people you resonate with, some people you don't, and that can change, right? You're going to resonate with certain jobs, not resonate with certain jobs, that can change. But it's very, very dangerous to have this idea that you're going somewhere and other people aren't going to be able to go there, or you're going to leave people behind. It's just a crazy, crazy concept. It's just not, it's just crazy. Your life's going to change, though. It's going to constantly change. People are going to come in your life. People are going to leave your life. Your mindset changes. This is so diluted as people think consciousness is separate from the body. Consciousness is the body. Do we see our loved ones again when we die? I believe so. I heard people ready to leave with their soul somewhere, and this is not true. I lost all my knowing when I was grieving my mom's death. Some of us are not going into 5D. Some will go to the 4D. Your kids will be in a higher vibration then because they can hold more of the light. Any other questions? Any other questions about the Akashic record? Do we go through our records when we die, Katie? Yeah, I think we do. Hi, Kathy. I think we do. Yes, we did do daylight savings time. Can you please speak about reincarnation? Reincarnation. Reincarnation is just when the soul decides to come back into the human body and have another human experience. It's just a choice. I am adopted. What does that mean? It means you chose to be adopted on your Akashic record. You chose it. Think about how courageous we have to be as souls to choose certain experiences. Do we see the past life we just had when we die? Yes. Can other people access our records without permission? They can, but they shouldn't. There's kind of these like universal laws that as awareness you're aware of. You always ask for permission when you are, you know, when you're bilocating, when you're connecting to someone's energy field, when you're connecting to someone's, you know, guides, when you're connecting to their higher self or their soul. I mean, you always ask for permission. Always. Always, always, always. If you ever read anyone, you should always be asking them for their permission. Karma. That's a big one. I'll just do another video on karma. Green juice purify the body, environment, exercise, etc. Doesn't accelerate the release of records. I think it helps the body anchor the light. In so then it does help release the Akashic records because it's helping the body anchor more light, you know, in some ways. Bilocating. Bilocating is when you are in two places at the same time. It's very similar to when you dream, Louise. When we dream, we're bilocating. We call it astral traveling, but it's bilocating. So basically, bilocating is where your physical body is right here, right? Like I'm sitting here and my body's here, but I can project awareness. I can project myself somewhere else into a different dimensional field or um, and it's you're projecting consciousness elsewhere and you experience something very different, and that's bilocating. So you can be in two places at the same time. What do people call it when they can look down and see, you know, they can see, uh, they call it something specific. I don't believe that suicide creates a karmic do-over, but that's a touchy subject. A lot of people do. Are most here light workers and wandering and star seeds? No, I would say it's probably, if I were to give like a percentage, probably like 60% are star seeds and light workers, and you know, people that came here to be of service, to work for the evolution, and probably 40% are just experiencing this. Like their purpose is not to assist humanity in the evolution. They're simply just experiencing the evolution or experiencing the third dimension. Um, the Akashic records cannot be destroyed because it's the light codes within your body. So you can't destroy the light codes. You can't destroy the DNA. It can be tampered with because it's light, so it can be tampered with based on the energy that's ingested from the external world. But it's very, very difficult to tamper with someone's Akashic records. It's very, very difficult to do that. But it is possible because it's just energy, right? Remote viewing, that was what I was thinking of. A walk-in. I love walk-ins. Walk-ins are such a beautiful subject to talk about. A walk-in is when the soul consciously, the soul checks out. It's like passes the baton to either another aspect of its soul outside of the body or a completely different soul. So many times a walk-in happens when the soul has it's too much. The soul has had enough. They don't want to keep participating in the life they created. They want out. The soul wants out. Um, and again, this can happen when it gets a little bit too intense. This can happen sometimes when the body's about to die. The physical form's about to stop. But it's basically when the soul consciously says, "I'm out," and tap wants to do a tap, pass the baton to another soul to come into the body at whatever age, or a different version of the soul. So, like a different aspect of the soul comes in instead of the aspect of the soul that originally incarnated. And it can be very strange because if it's a different soul, then it's a completely different person almost. They speak differently, they walk differently, they're just very different. Um, and if it's an aspect of the same soul, then there will be memory loss, right? There's memory loss for many walk-ins where they don't remember much prior to the walk-in. Um, if an aspect of the soul comes back in, um, many times the walk-in will have a remembrance of that um, inception point, right? If it's a soul that's completely different, they won't always remember. Can be a little bit like traumatizing. Will the Earth eventually shift back into the 5D? Yes. The planet herself is almost anchored in 5D right now. Essentially, she's anchored. If we were anchored in fifth dimensional frequency completely, then we would see a very different Earth right now. So most of her frequency is in a fifth dimensional field. But see, this is what people don't understand. There is always going to be a third dimensional field because you can't dissolve a third dimensional field. It's always in existence. It's just choice. So when a majority of the human collective only sees, experiences, responds to a fifth dimensional Earth, it's a very different reality. So it's trippy because what our body vibrates at is what we see. You can only see what your body's vibrating at. Yeah, it probably happened to you, Louise, because you asked the question. Earth is waiting for us, yes. Planes of existence, beautiful way to say it. Is the third dimension also a matter of frequency? Yes, literally matter. It's matter. Its frequency is matter. What about psychopath, sociopath, etc.? Does the soul choose this? It's a really good question. I'm not exactly sure because a sociopath or a psychopath, that is a response to trauma. Sometimes you can be born with those kind of mental constructs, but most of the time, a sociopath or a psychopath is a response, an unconscious response to a trauma. And so the trauma is part of the Akashic record. So the trauma may have been some sort of abuse or abandonment or neglect or something, right? But it may have gone a little overboard because humans have free will. So again, like it's crazy to think this, but when two souls contract to assist each other in experiencing core consciousnesses, it's a shit show. It's sort of like, well, how bad are they gonna be and how painful is it gonna be? And, as a soul, you don't have the specifics. You don't know what your father's gonna do exactly or what your mother's gonna do or how it's gonna play out. There are no specifics. There are no absolutes on this planet because of free will, which is you choosing how you're going to be. So a psychopath or a sociopath, a narcissist, they didn't necessarily choose that in their Akashic record, but it was born out of the experiences of the trauma, and the trauma is what was part of the Akashic record. So being human, it can be very intense, and the trauma can be very, very, very bad, and it can create a reaction where the sociopathic behaviors come online or the psychopathic behaviors come online. Um, and there are many stories of souls that come into the body and they have these tendencies from a very young age. So it's possible with those souls that they did choose to experience some sort of um, psychotic behavior, perhaps. There is no black or white with this. No, there isn't an obviousness that everyone sees. I don't think so. There is a exit point for a lot of humans, but because of free will, it's it's not easy to stay in that exit point. Um, and for example, if you don't know how to clear or heal the trauma in your body, you may create more sickness or illness or disease that may decay the body faster, and then you may end up dying quicker than you were supposed to. You may accidentally, sometimes there's accidents that happen that were literally not supposed to happen. And the soul exits the body dies. And that wasn't necessarily part of the Akashic record or the plan. The free will is a smorgasbord. Like it's so there's many, many experiences that the soul has that is based on the free will of the personality ego choosing all the time. That's why there's all these divine interventions, where you're like, I was supposed to be on that airplane and my car was ran out of gas and I didn't get to the airport and I was never able to get on that flight. It's divine intervention, which is basically your soul saying, no, 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 right? Sometimes we don't hear the intervention. We couldn't hear the intervention. And the next thing you know, something might happen. So sometimes, the death is chosen. Sometimes it's not. Most souls have a desired sort of way in which they are choosing to pass and time frame, but it doesn't always happen that way. Yes. Hey, Lori, I had a miscarriage last October at 10 weeks. I'm so sorry, Stas. With my baby, we have had a soul. What determines the exit? That's a really complicated subject. I'll just share my perspective. So there's a couple things that can happen. So a soul doesn't have to enter into the body until literally right before it is birthed out. And a soul can literally enter into the body the moment the egg and the sperm connect. So the moment the egg and the sperm connect, it is the soul has already agreed to come in. So if you get pregnant, okay, there is a soul agreement. It's not just like the physical egg and the physical, from a higher perspective, there always has to be a soul that's going to agree to this process of becoming human. That doesn't mean the soul has to enter into that physical womb. It doesn't. It gets to choose when it's going to enter into the womb. But every sperm and egg that connect, there is a conscious or unconscious agreement with you and some other amazing soul that agreed to do life together. And there's many different reasons why women have miscarriages. And it's not necessarily that soul's choice, right? Sometimes it's just the physical body. Sometimes it's the environment. The physical body is a very delicate. Birth is having a child, getting pregnant is very delicate. I remember when I was in my early 40s, I was trying to get pregnant. And I remember my doctor was like, the amount of women that have miscarriages that don't know they have miscarriages are like off, like it's it's just massive, right? So it's a very delicate process. Like it's just like holy shit to actually have the process unravel into a child. I think is more rare than we realize. So all of that to say, take this with a grain of salt, but many times the soul won't come in, right? But there is a soul agreement. And many times the miscarriages happen because the body's doing whatever the body's doing. It's not because the soul said, "Hey, I'm going to agree, and then we're not going to follow through with it, and I'm going to die, before I'm born." It's not usually like that. But there's always an agreement, right? And then if the physical body does whatever the physical body does, the soul hangs out and waits for another opportunity or um, gotta fix my necklace. There. And maybe the soul chose to come in and experience that. It's very possible. Again, it's not black and white. It just really depends. But if you talk to a lot of parents, a lot of them, they'll know whether the soul was inside the body while they were, well, the mother for sure. um, um, but even if a child is born and it was, let's say the soul was in the body most of the time, it will hear its father's voice and listen. It will remember. It will hear certain songs and remember them. It's because the soul was in the body. The soul can come in at 2 months, 3 months, soul gets to choose. The soul doesn't need to be in the body in order for the body to start to develop. Have fun in yoga class. Yes, it's possible. Do twin flames or anything of this concept really exist or spiritual creation part of the record? Twin flames, I don't know. It just not in the way that humans see the twin flames. I mean, it's a it's all semantics, It's all semantics. I think it's a program. I think it's a deep program that gets humans really stuck in suffering. What are deep soul contracts people believe to be twin flames? It can be very dangerous to get into that realm because it can create a lot of suffering. And many, many times, what people think are twin flames are just really deep soul contracts. You're welcome, Stez. Sorry for what you went through. There's probably so much information that varies from what I just said, so always take it with a grain of salt. Anything else before we go? Anything else? Anything else about Akashic Records? I visited the Akashic Records a couple times, but the closest I've gotten to read it is only seeing a couple of words. How can I get more? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. If it's your Akashic record, maybe ask your soul to show you more. What would be a deep soul contract as opposed to a regular soul contract? Well, they all have. a deeper like different lessons or different reasons for coming together. So sometimes you may have a contract with someone where it is a support system, right? So somebody that's the contract is to support you during a certain phase of your life, or support you, or you support them during certain experiences of your life, right? And so they come into your life and it's a soul contract, and they're there for a certain amount of years, and then all of a sudden they're just gone, right? And they're just there to experience that part of your life, and then it dies, goes away. They're gone, or just don't see them anymore, or whatever. It's a soul contract. Then you have another soul contract that can be very, very intense with a relationship, right? Where they are activating deep, deep, deep core consciousnesses, deep wounds, trauma. And trauma, deep wounds, are your core consciousnesses that were experienced when you were younger, that we call trauma. And so these contracts that you find later in life, perhaps when you're a little bit older, are designed to heal that core consciousness or that trauma. And so it's going to ping it over and over and over again. So you'll find a partner that constantly leaves you feeling um, unsafe. They constantly trigger your safety. They constantly trigger your insecurity. They constantly trigger, um, they're very violent, right? Or they're really aggressive. So they're triggering a wound of not feeling safe in the world. Um, those are intense, intense soul contracts. Soul contracts that are very, very difficult to leave, are deep, deep soul contracts. There is a deep lesson there that it's trying to teach you. And it's a matter of recognizing when the contract is complete and when the patterning is still playing out. That's a fine line to walk, right? It's like, when am I complete with this lesson? And just because you're complete with the lesson doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to leave the contract, right? Um, because there's all these emotions and the behaviors that you have with them, and being with them all the time, and the love you may feel, and the cuddling or attraction, or there's all these other things that come along with relationships of any sort. But if these relationships are soul contracts, then it doesn't matter all the other kind of beautiful, great things about it. If it's simply a soul contract, which is that it's here to teach you something, right? And it's going to trigger that over and over again. It's not always going to be easy to leave it. But eventually you have to come to terms with, are you complete with this lesson, or do you need to keep playing it out over and over again? And then, of course, when you end that soul contract, um, have you kind of learned what it was that it was here to show you? There's a lot of idiosyncrasies with soul contracts, because you have really intense soul contracts with your parents or your siblings, family members, right? And a lot of times you can't ever actually like exit them in the same way that you would a friend or a partner, perhaps, right? They may have to somehow be in your life. And so it's about ending the contract even if they're still in your life, which is very possible. Very, very possible. You can end contracts and still have the person in your life. I've been using the prayer, show me what I need to see, show me what I need to hear, show me what I need to feel. And I feel like I've quantum leaped this past week, new levels of presence and trust. Yeah, it's a powerful prayer when you say that. Show me what I need to see, show me what I need to feel, show me what I need to hear. You realize that everything's being shown to you. Oh, I learn lessons through joy. I love that. Okay, you guys, I am going to go. I had a really funny morning, which I'll share in Untangled on Tuesday. I had a very funny morning, and I'm tired. I'm tired. So thank you all for being here, though. I really, really appreciate it. Go get the Divine Design if you have not picked it up, or get it in audio if you don't have it in audio. If you only have it in audio, get the physical book because it's really powerful when you hold it and when you read it. Come back next Thursday for episode 6, our final episode in this series, unless I just keep doing them. And yes, definitely come back on Tuesday at 9 a.m. to listen to Untangled, my weekly series. And I think that's it. You're rad, breath, breathe, Brooke, breathe. I love it. Thanks, you guys. I hope this helped. Hope something clicked in you. And I'll see you Tuesday and Thursday. Mwah.